Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Kidushin Daf Yod. Begin 10 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues explaining the halacha of our opening mission of this parak of this Mesechta with Ha'isha Niknas B'Shal Zrachim, that the woman gets acquired in 3 different ways. We said Bekesef, B'Shar, Rabbi already explained in great detail these 3 kinyanim of money, a document, and cohabitation. And then the Mishnah had a machlekes regarding what is the amount of money that's necessary for Kidushin, and the Gemara is going to explain this machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Just corresponds to Bekazich and Cheskel, turn to Daf Chaim, turn to today's Daf. Something discussed in today's Daf are the opinion of Beis Shammai, that they say that it has to be bedinner. What's the source for this halacha? Why do they say it's not the minimum amount of money? Where do they get this amount of a dinner? Regarding the halacha of Ishmak Pedis Alatzma, a woman is very particular regarding herself, that she wouldn't want to get engaged with any amount less than that. It would be degrading for her. Also, the Gemara discussed regarding Kesef Tzuri v'Kesef Medina. There was this more higher quality money, and there was provincial money, which is this more common man type of money, the currency. And they're both called Kesef, and then the contrast of those 2 types of currency as it relates to halacha. And some of the other important terms and concepts are Guroi and Kesef, which is when the Eved wants to be able to get out earlier. Let's say you sold for 6 years, and you sold for $600. So if they worked for 3 years, so then it's $300 left, according to proportionately how much it was sold per year, so he could redeem himself that way. And Yud is a different way of getting out of the slavery, which is if the maidservant of the master decides he's going to marry this Amavriya, that is Yud or his son, that could also be a way out of the slavery. So begin the current Daf Yud Aleph, 10 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara quotes from the words of the Mishnah. Mishnah had this machlekes bekesef, this kinyan of kesef. How much money do you need to use for the Kidushin? So Beis Shammai, when they say bedinner, v'chulu, etc., which the Mishnah tells us ubishava dinner or something worth a dinner, whereas Beis Hillel say no, a pruta, which is the lowest denomination of currency, it's a copper coin that's nothing close to a dinner, or shava pruta, that is the amount that Beis Hillel says you need for the Kidushin. So the Gemara is going to offer 4 reasons why Beis Shammai requires a dinner. Says the Gemara, "My tamai the Beis Shammai." What's the reason Beis Shammai that they say that you need to have a dinner? Where'd they get that from? So Amar B'Zeri, because you're talking about money. Money would be a pruta like Beis Hillel. So Amar B'Zeri says like this: says Shekain isha makpedes alatzma, because a woman is particular regarding herself. And she would not be in agreement. She wouldn't be agreeable to being engaged less than a dinner. It's degrading for her. It's not something that would be befitting for her, and therefore she wouldn't be in agreement. The whole point of Kidushin is that you're buying the woman, so to speak, and she's in agreement, she's consenting to this. She wouldn't consent less than a dinner. So Amalei Abaye says, really? If that's the case, could go in Bonsid Rabbi Yanai. The daughters of Rabbi Yanai, the Kaptan on Avshayu, they were very particular, higher class or more aristocratic or whatever it was. They wouldn't go for this, you can't take me out to some lounge or something like that. We got to go high class or something. So, V'loi Mekachi B'pochas Mitarkava. The word tarkav is the word trey and kav, meaning they wouldn't be engaged. They wouldn't allow themselves to be engaged. That's a ring, no. They wouldn't do it less than 3 kavin of the dinari of golden dinarim. So hachinami, are you going to tell me that they're also the ipashta yodo v'kibla chadzuzah me'achar? That if she goes ahead and she stretches out her hand and she takes 1 dinner from another person, Hachanami Delabe Kidushin is not going to be a Kidushin because they wouldn't want to go ahead and let themselves be less than that. If Beis Shammai's whole svara is based on that a woman is makpid on herself, so what would you say about Bansa de Rabbi Yanai? That if they would take a Kidushin from someone, you tell me that's it, no Kidushin, because for them they're makpid on themselves, and therefore they definitely would not be in agreement for something less than 3 kavin of golden dinar. So Amalei, on that, he said, Reb Zera said back to Abaye, says, no, pashta yada b'kibla. If someone stretches out their hand and they receive it from the man, loikamina, I didn't say, of course that would be enough for Beis Shammai for a pruta. And the same thing would be for the daughters of Rabbi Yanai. That of course they would be engaged because they're willing and they're consenting for that amount of money. And for them, that's something that's worth something because they're stretching out their hand, they're accepting. Just like we said, you could even do mekadesh. You could give a chash of a person money, and that could be like you received something. Because for you, it has value. We said like someone with the kerchief, it was worth it for him to put on his head. You could give something subjective value. Kikamina, when did I say that you need to have a value of a dinner? Is specifically the kid shabalelya. the Kidushin was at nighttime, it was dark. Couldn't see. And he's groping around his pocket trying to find where's the ring, and he puts it on her finger and he says, Arein Mukadesh is Li, and she doesn't know what's on her finger. Or Inami de Shavi Shliach. If she made an agent to receive her Kidushin and it didn't consult with her with how much it would have to be. So that's where we presume, says Beis Shammai, okay, a woman would not be in agreement less than a dinner. Now, Rashi says, you're right. The daughters of Rabbi Yanai, if they would make a shliach, their Kedushin would not be less than 3 kavim of golden dinar, because they are very high class. They wouldn't do anything a shidduch less than that. So when a person stretches out their hand, of course, says Reb Zera, of course she'd be Mekadeshes. You wouldn't require a dinner. This is all according to the first approach of the Gemara, because she's accepting that. When she doesn't know what it is, at nighttime or shliach, then we would say, okay, she's not doing less than a dinner. Tais doesn't like this. Yeah, if she's stretching out her hand, she's taking it. But when are we saying that it needs to be a dinner? Is when she doesn't know what it is. So when she's not consenting, she doesn't know what it is. Nighttime is shliach, and then you would have to be a dinner. And Rashi says you're right. According to the case of this explanation, the daughters of Rabbi Yanai would not be less than tarkava de dinari. No, because right. But the reason why he's saying that is because that's the default. That if you stretch out your hand, you take a pruta, you are subject, like we say achshave. There's a concept in halacha called achshave. Achshave is that's whole shayla. It's Pesach and chametz and this and that or whatever with medicine. When you put something in your mouth, you're giving it significance. So you could make achshave. You could say, yeah, I'll take the pruta. That for me is also I'll be willing. But with the default, if we don't know anything otherwise, Bisham is saying it's got to be a dinner. Again, Tais doesn't like this pshat of Rashi because this is what's called in halacha of that you're making it subjective. It's what's called nasata deberecha l'shiurin, because that's every single person. You got to know where they are in the stratosphere of the status of how chashuv they are. That means for this woman, it's not going to be kedushin less than $100, $1,000, $1 million. It becomes very subjective. But that's the way Rashi explains this first interpretation of the Gemara. That's one pshat. Rav Yismamei says a different pshat. He says Tamai de Beishamai. The reasoning of Beishamai is Rabbi Yehuda Meravasi. What's that halacha? Why is it based on that? Rabbi Yehuda Meravasi says like this. It says Kol Kesef Amma Torah. Whenever it says Kesef in the Torah, so that is Kesef Tzuri. Now Kesef can mean silver or money. We're talking about where it's referring to money. So that is this Tyrian. It's like tire, like the way we say the word tire is from the antiquity, the country. Tyrian silver. That's what tzuri is. Tzur is if the Torah tells you have to have shkalim, so that is a shekel tzuri. And if it doesn't say which, so then it would be the lowest coin of tzur. But when there's kesef, it has to be kesef of tzur. That's when it's biblical halacha. When the Torah tells you need something that needs money, so that's going to be from tzur. When regarding rabbinical halacha, when the rabbis require you to give kesef, there would be kesef medina, what's called the provincial money, which Gemara later on is going to explain that kesef medina is an eighth of kesef tzuri. So if let's say it's a sela, so it's going to be an eighth of a sela tzuri. If the rabbis require you for rabbinic halacha a dinner, it'd be an eighth of a dinner tzuri. So therefore, how does this answer the question of why Beis Shammai require a dinner? Is because you cannot say a pruta, because a pruta is necheshes, is copper. By tzuri, there was no copper coins. By kedushin, it says kesef. Where does it say kesef in the Torah by kedushin? So if you recall, we had learned that Gzera Shava of kicha from Stay Ephron. How do we know kesef is a kedushin? That's because we learned from Stay Ephron. And by Stay Ephron it says nasati kesef hasa the kach mimeni. Oh, so therefore you see it cannot be a pruta because Ravasi's halacha is called kesef amam b'Torah is kesef tzuri, and in tzur they didn't have prutas. They didn't have copper coins. Now, once we know that it cannot be a pruta because it's copper, so obviously it has to be something significant. So the Gemara is going to shortly tell us, therefore we said it, okay, it's not the next thing over pruta, we're going to make it into a dinner, which is something already the lowest significant of currency. Right, but I'm saying that's the word of meaning. We're not saying the amount, we're saying the type of currency, not necessarily the amount, the quantity of 400. But the kesef is going to be true. So that's the way Rashi explains that this is the second approach of the Gemara, how we know it can't be a pruta because it says kesef in the Torah. Now the Gemara goes back to explain this actual halacha. We learned like this. I'm Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. He says, Kol kesef amar Torah. Whenever it says kesef in the Torah, it means kesef tzuri. V'shal devreim rabbinic halacha, it's kesef medina. So the Gemara says, really, uklalahu? Is this a general rule that whenever it says kesef in the Torah, it's specifically silver, meaning really kesef means money, but also means silver. And really, in this context, the Gemara is saying that Rav Asi says, if it says in the Torah kesef, it actually does mean silver or its monetary value. And the ramification is that we said it has to be kesef tzuri and it cannot be prutos. Is that true? Whenever it says kesef in the Torah, it's going to be kesef tzuri, which is silver. But we continue to Beis, the Gemara asks from a few different sources that seem to have cases of kesef, where it says in the Torah, and it actually is not going to be that of kesef tzuri. Why? Because varei taina. You have the halacha of if a person makes a claim on his friend that, hey, you owe me $100. And the guy admits to part of it. Says, not true, I don't owe you $100, I owe you $50. So we know there's the famous shvuah of moed b'miktzas. You have to swear that you only owe half of what you're admitting to, not the other half. The chsev, it says in the Torah and Shemais, it says, ki yidin ish al re'eyu. If a man's going to give to his friend kesef, it says the word kesef, oy kelim, or vessels lishmer, to watch. Okay, that's regarding the shomer that is making him swear. And then on that, the pasuk says, asher yomer ki huzeh, that he says, this is what it is. The Gemara Baba Kama of Kabzayim Manaf learns from this pasuk that if ki huzeh, what's this, and not something else, is moed b'miktzas, you're admitting to part of it, but not all of it, then you have to swear. Where that's where it says, v'nikr balabayis, that's where the Gemara explains over there, it says that he comes to make a shvuah. Okay, so it's regarding the shvuah moed b'miktzas, that the pasuk says the word kesef. Now it's not, the Mishnah teaches over there, Masechta Shvuas hadayanim, the oath of the judges, when they make someone take a shvuah, is not going to be less than hataina. The claim has to be shtei kesef, 2 ma'ah of kesef, ma'ida, and the admission is a shava pruta. If the guy even admits to 1 pruta worth of your claim, that would already qualify for the minimum of a shvuah of moed b'miktzas. Now, Rashi brings that in the Masechta Shvuas Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says that the denial has to be 2 ma'ah of kesef, and then your admission, at least the shava pruta. Shmuel says no, not that your denial has to be 2 ma'ah of kesef. The claim itself could just be 2 ma'ah of kesef, even if you only denied a pruta of it or admitted to a pruta of it. Either way, you're going to be chayav. Okay, that's a machlekes regarding how to explain this halacha. But whatever it is that we see from this is, the way Rashi explains the Gemara's question is that it says that the minimum claim, or at least the denial of the claim, is shtei kesef. Wait a second. So obviously, when it says kesef oikedim lishmar, it's not precisely kesef, that it's silver coins. It must be that the Torah was particular about the money, not kesef per se. Now, since it didn't say how much, so the Torah only gave it over to the sages to interpret how much kesef. Now, the Rabbanan held that it's not worthy of a shvuah less than a claim of 2 ma'ah of kesef. Because if the pasuk was specifically kesef, so although that a ma'ah is the lowest coin of tzuri, but where do you get the idea that it's 2? That's how Rashi explains the Gemara's question. That must be that kesef is lav davka. Because it was davka, then what are you giving me this whole shtickle Torah, hataynish te kesef? What do you mean? Say 1 ma'ah of kesef, should be the claim. Because it says, Ki Nisrael Kesef Akem Lishmar. And tell me Kesef means a Kesef Tzuri. And okay, give me whatever coin you think of Kesef Tzuri, it makes sense. Let's say Ma, but why are you saying two? Obviously, the word Kesef doesn't mean the actual Tzuri coin. It just means money. Now, money can mean a pruta, money can mean two Ma of Kesef, whatever the Chacham see fit in interpretation. So obviously, you see, not like what you're saying that the word Kesef automatically means Kesef Tzuri. Why you tell me that Bishami hold? Why tell me that every time it says Kesef, it means Kesef Tzuri? You see over here by the halacha by the mixes that it doesn't mean a Kesef Tzuri. If Kesef meant this silver coin, it would mean one of them. Where are you getting two? Must mean just money, and then money can mean a pruta then also. So the Gemara says no. The reason why it's two over there, you're right. Really, it's talking about the Kesef Tzuri. So why is it two then? Hasam dumi de kalim. That's because the pasuk says kesef kalim. So it's comparing the kesef to kalim. Ma kalim shnayim, just like vessels are in the plural, is two of kesef shnayim. So to money is also going to be plural in the two. That's why. But you're right. Really, would be the kesef tzuri of the coin that there is in tzur. And the same thing goes the other way around. Ma kesef. And Tais discuss at length regarding this other sugya that seems to say differently in Rashi. Also, ma kesef dabachashav. Just like kesef is a significant item. Av kalim dabachashav, so do the vessels have to be a chashav item that the vessel has to be worth two silver coins, which excludes from the opinion that's brought over there in Masechta Shvuas that if let's say the claim was of two needles and he admits to one of them, he'd be chayiv in Haidah of Maida Mixes of even just one of them. They were saying no. We're comparing the kalim to kesef, just like kesef is chashav, so do the kalim also have to be chashav. But upon them, we answered the question by saying that yes, kesef does mean kesef tzuri. The reason why it's two is because it's compared to kalim. The Gemara continues to ask. It says, "What do you mean? Vari meiser? You have the halacha of meiser sheni, where the halacha the chesiv, it says a pasuk in Devarim. The pasuk is talking about if let's say you have meiser sheni, you have to take it up to eat in Yerushalayim. But you have truckloads of food that you have as meiser sheni. So instead, the pasuk says, "V'nasata by kesef, you'll put the money and b'tzarta ha kesef b'yadecha." You'll wrap the money in your hand, meaning you'll transfer the food into money. You'll wrap it in your hand and you'll bring it to the place Hashem chose. You bring it to Yerushalayim, you'll eat it there. Okay, but it says in the pasuk over there that the Meiser Sheni money is called kesef. Now, if it's not, we learn the Mishnah Meiser Sheni that says Hapirat Sela. If someone is taking his prutais of Meiser Sheni money and he's changing it upwards to a Sela because it's too hard to take all that pennies with you to Yerushalayim, big heavy bags of pennies, so you want to take the higher denominations. So he could do that mimois meiser sheni from the monies of meiser sheni, which the Rashi brings that the Gemara concludes over there that this Mishnah meiser sheni, the Bishamay say that you have to go ahead and with all of the sela. Meaning there's two different ways the Mishnah discusses over there, either making it to smaller denominations or larger denominations. Bishamay say you have to do the whole thing, not some of it, as the Mishnah there explains, because it's going to cause a loss for the Ma'aser Sheni, whatever it is. But one thing is we learn from there is that originally must have been that you had been mechalel, meaning deconsecrating. You have your Ma'aser Sheni produce, you have to deconsecrate, you have to transfer the sanctity from it onto monies. Obviously, originally you had deconsecrated onto copper coins, and that's what the Mishnah there is discussing. Now you don't want to take all the copper coins up to, you have all these pennies, it's like big heavy glass that you save with all the cigarette butts, and then you have all the pennies over there, whatever. You want to schlep it up to Yerushalayim. So you say, okay, you go to the bank, you say, okay, how much are these pennies? They go, take all the pennies, and they go, okay, this comes out to $750, whatever, and he takes up, that's very easy to take. But from the case itself, is evident that you had originally on copper coins. How could you do that? It says in the Torah, the word, and you told me kesef means kesef tzuri, and that's what it told me the Meiser Sheni. How could you have done it originally a Meiser Sheni onto copper coins that now you're upgrading it to Sela, but I thought it says ha-kesef, and it can't mean copper. So the Gemara says, good question, but I have an answer for that too. Kesef ha-kesef riba. That it doesn't say b'tzarta kesef b'yadecha. It says ha-kesef. The extra hay is coming to include another type of a coin to tell me that prutas are going to work. But you're right, if it didn't say ha-kesef, it would mean specifically it has to be kesef tzuri. But the Gemara continues to ask and says, "But what about hektish? If a pasuk by hektish, the Chsibit says a pasuk in Vayikra, it says v'nasna kesef v'kamloi, that the person's going to give the money to hektish. It says v'yosef chamishes kesef erkacha alav v'kamloi. He's going to add on a fifth of the money of its value, and then the one who is redeeming the hektish is going to get it. Okay, so when you're redeeming hektish, what does it say in the Torah? It says the word hakesef. Shmuel says hektish shavamana. If you have hektish that's worth a mana, so if you're shechiluloi al shava pruta, the halacha is even if you deconsecrate it onto something worth a pruta, mechul, it's deconsecrated. What's the main point of that teaching of Shmuel? So Rashi brings that it's really just to teach you that there's no halacha of oina, of overpricing, fraudulent charges for hektish. Because the pasuk, when it talks about the isra of oina, it says ish es achiv, which Shmuel is coming to teach us that just like it's excluded from the halacha of oina, it's even excluded from the halacha of bittul mekach, which there's two halachas. One is, okay, there was an overcharge over here, so like give me back the price differential. Other one is this is a mekach tais. So you don't have either one of them by hektish. So even if you have something worth a mana, 100 dinarim, and not only you're not giving a dinner, you gave a pruta, it's still going to be a chil. Okay, that's the main point of his teaching. But for the Gemara, wait a second. The pasuk by hektish says the word kesef. How could you be mechal on the pruta? But a pruta is a copper coin. And you told me whenever it says kesef, it's kesef tzuri. Says the Gemara, no, hasam dir nami. I also have an answer for that too. Because kesef yolav mi meiser. A moment ago I just told you because of an extra hay. By meiser, ha kesef tells you there could even be not kesef tzuri. It could even be a pruta. So we learn that, how do we know the halachas of redemption? We learn of hektish from the halachas of meiser. So just like over there, the kesef could be even a pruta, so to be by hektish, because Rashi explains, in contrast, whenever else it says in the Torah kesef, we're not going to learn out from meiser. Why not? Because number one, it's not comparable, it's not similar. Here they're both pidyon. And moreover, is here by hektish, it said the word kesef more than once. So therefore, you could say that it's extra to learn out from the halacha of meiser. But everywhere else, where it says kesef, it would have to be kesef tzuri. I think Gemara continues to ask, but a Kidushin isha, what do you do with the halacha of getting engaged to the woman? The Chsibit says a pasuk in the bottom, it says kikach ish ishu ba'ala, when the man's going to take a woman and he's going to cohabit with her, and we have this gzera shava that we mentioned previously already twice, that it says kach mimeni by Sada Ephron, and it says yikach over here, to learn out that just like kesef is a kinyan by a sadeh, so too is kesef a kinyan by Kidushin. Okay, but what's the source? It says over there, kesef hasadeh. It says the word kesef. Now the problem is, it's not what we learned in our Mishnah, and this is really interesting because we actually brought this teaching in to explain Beis Shammai, but there's another opinion on Mishnah. Beis Hillel, they say, no, Kidushin could be with pruta, b'shava pruta, with a pruta or just something worth a pruta. His name is that to say, the Rav Asi, who says whenever it says in the Torah kesef, it means kesef tzuri. The Amake Beis Shammai must be like Beis Shammai. Not how aliba the hilchasa according to Beis Hillel, because Beis Hillel is saying no, you can do it as a pruta. But it says in the Torah kesef by Kidushin because we learn that from Stay Ephraim, which it says kesef, and that's how we know the halacha. So then it should have to be with kesef tzuri, have to be a dinner like the Beis Shammai says, and not with a pruta like Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara, you're right. The Gemara comes up really with a whole different approach to what we're saying up until now. It's just meaning modifying it. If we did say this teaching, this is what we really said. His teaching was whenever it says a set amount of money in the Torah, where how much it's going to be. For example, when a man is ma'anis a girl, there's 50 shkalim the Torah talks about. When someone kills someone's eved, shloishim shkalim he has to give. When someone's moitzi shemra on his newly married wife, there's 100 shkalim the Torah says, where it says shkalim, and it says how much it is. By kesef kedushin, it doesn't say in the Torah a quantity. On that, Rav Asi was not talking about at all. Therefore, yes, it could be like Beis Hillel, that's going to be a pruta. Kesef, when it says a set amount, then kesef tzuri has to be the tzuri kesef, b'shal devrayim, and regarding rabbinic law is going to be kesef medina. So it's not difficult from the halacha of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah was not talking about a kesef katzav. But then says the Gemara, if that's all Rav Asi is teaching, my kamash malan, then what's he teaching us? Tanina, it's a Mishnah Mechayris. The Mishnah says this halacha. It says Chamesh Shlam Shal Ben, when you have to give the 5 shkalim of redeeming a firstborn son, or Shleishim Shal Eved, when you have to give the 30 shkalim for having killed someone's slave, or Chamishim Shal Einos B'Shal Mafatav, they have to give the 50 shkalim because he violated a girl or seduced her, or Meir Shal Meitir Shemer, the 100 shkalim he has to give when he puts out a bad name on his newly married wife. Kulam b'shekel hakodesh, they're all with the holy shekel, b'mana tzuri, with the silver mana. So there's our Mishnah in B'chayres. What do we need? Rav Asi Namoyder to tell us this halacha. He's only talking about kesef katzav amma b'tayra. So the Gemara, you're right. We don't need him to teach you anything regarding the kesef amma b'tayra. V'shal devrayim kesef medina, the rabbinic halacha of the provincial kesef is tzichalei, that we needed Rav Asi for. That's not taught within the Mishnah how much it's going to be, and he's letting us know that it's going to be Kesev Medina. The Tanya, which is actually a Mishnah Baba Kama, which, what do you mean the Tanya? I thought you said it's Rav Asi. So no, in other words, where do we find rabbinic Kesev that we needed Rav Asi to qualify and say it's going to be Kesev Medina? So it would be like the following halacha, which is rabbinic halacha. Hatakei lechaveiroi, which either means to say that someone, look at that. Right? Either that someone is blows in his ear, that's the lashon of Rabbein Halevi, or Rabbein Hazakan, Lamandu Rashi says, is that he whacked him near his ear. Either way, he's blowing or he's pushing something by his ear of his friend. So the halacha is noisen loisela. He has to give him a sela. Why? So not for any injury. Rashi says that's how much the Chacham evaluated the value of the embarrassment for a medium type of a person. So that's a rabbinic halacha, because not actual hezek. It's embarrassing. Guy walks over, blows next to his ear. So Rav Asi is letting us know that noisen loisela, that when the Mishnah says over there you have to give him a sela, it means a sela tzuri. And v'loi tema, don't say my sela. What does it mean? When it says over there sela, is arba zuz, is 4 zuz? No. Elamai sela, what is a sela? It's palga de zuzah. It's an eighth of a sela tzuri, which is going to be a half of a zuz. So that's meaning the 4 zuz versus 1 is the same thing as the sela tzuri and the sela medina. He's letting you know that this halacha is only going to be an eighth of how much it would be, either half a zuz versus 4 zuz, because Davidi inchi de kol lapalga de zuzia, because people call this half of a zuz, meaning the sela medina, they call it istira, which is a sela medina. Again, just explaining that this is a halacha that's a rabbinic payment, and rabbinic payments, that kesef that we say is going to be in the sela medina, not in the kesef tzuri, and that's what Rav Asi had to teach us, because you're right, that of the biblical halacha that we know already from a Mishnah Masechtas B'chayros. That was the second approach regarding this halacha of where did Beis Shammai get the halacha of dinner from, which again really we're falling off from it a little bit, but we said kesef amma b'tayra is going to be kesef tzuri, and therefore it would have to be a dinner. It couldn't be a pruta. The Gemara really answered that maybe not true, because Beis Hillel was saying they say pruta, and it says kesef, could be for that he would say it's only kesef katzav, a set amount, and for Kidushin doesn't say a set amount. Now the third approach, he says a different shot. Tamayid Beis Shammai, the reason Beis Shammai that it's going to be a dinner for the Kidushin is Kiddushizkiya. Like the halach of Chizkiya that's brought later on the parak of Yodal Mabeis, which is taught regarding the halach of the Eved Ivri, meaning, as we mentioned when we started the Masechta, we said that if you look at the transition of the Mishnayos, it talks about many different types of kinyanim. So it doesn't even talk about women after this. It talks about, let's say, the kinyanim of Eved Ivri, because that's really what it is. Kedushin is a kinyan, and that's how we say Isha Niknes. So when it talks about in later Mishnah regarding the Jewish slave, it says that he could be kind of himself back, meaning he was sold for a slave for 6 years. He could buy himself back with what's called Giroyin Kesef, which is that he calculates with his master. When he comes to redeem himself, he says, look, you bought me for this and this amount of money. You're only allowed to work me as a slave for 6 years. Comes out, of course, this guy's an accountant, this slave, this Jewish slave, and it goes through and says, this is how much it comes out that you bought me for per year. Let's calculate how many years I was going to work for you, and then I'm going to take off the amount of the years that I still owe you, and then I'll pay you out for that amount. And on that is what Chizkiah says. From where do we know this halacha from? Because the Amma Chizkiah says Amakra, the pasuk says in Shemais, it says by the Amma Havriya, which has the same halacha as the Eved Ivri, these Jewish slaves, either male or female. It says vehefta. Now the word vehefta is an interesting word, because vehefta, it doesn't say veniftis, that she'll be redeemed. It's that he shall cause her to be redeemed. So it sounds like that even her master is assisting in the redemption. Oh, how's that happening? The Be'etzes teaches us that, actually the way he helps her is because he diminishes the price tag for her redemption as time goes out, and then she could go out. Okay, but obviously we see that an Amma of Riyah cannot be bought for less than a dinner. Why? Where do you see this? Because if you're going to say the Yavla dinner, if you say that originally, when he bought her for a dinner, it would make sense the halacha of the Mishnah later on. We could understand that now you could diminish to lower currencies all the way down to a pruta. But if you say that you could buy an Amavriya with just a pruta, could you diminish from a pruta that she should give him anything to buy him out from what he has in her? Now, later on, the Gemara is going to conclude this teaching and is going to say that according to Beis Shammai, the Kidushin of a woman is learnt out from the halacha of Amavriya because they're compared one with the other, and therefore we're going to show you that just like the kinyan of an Amavriya cannot be with a pruta, must be with a dinner, so too a woman. But the Gemara first jumps in and asks, and doesn't let them finish their sentence. You know those people, right? Doesn't let you finish the sentence, and then we'll get back to that in a second. But first the Gemara says, wait a second, what type of raya are you bringing me that the Amavriya cannot be bought for a pruta? Must be like a dinner, because how she's ever going to buy herself out proportionately, but there's no lower than a penny, can't break the penny in half, there's nothing to buy out. Says the Gemara, whoa. But maybe that's why we're just saying like this. Hey, the Yavla dinner, if he gave her a dinner. Tigareya ad pruta, then as time goes on, she could diminish the amount of the value that she owes him. But you're right. When he gave her a pruta, and that's how he bought her originally, look at Gerei Klav. Of course there won't be any Gerei in Kesef, but it's only in case of when it would be. The Gemara says, no, as we continue to have a good base enough, that's not possible. You cannot say that. You cannot entertain to say that she could be bought with something that you cannot have Gerua, because the Torah does mention Gerua over here, so we would say it's Dumah de Yud. There's another halacha called Yud, that just like Yud is written in the pasuk, it says Ashaloya Ada, when it talks about the Gerayim, when it talks about ways she can get out, it says, and you know why she has to buy herself out? Because the Adin didn't do Yud. So we learn that the master is permitted to do Yud, which is basically a Kidushin, during her years of slavery, and she'll be engaged to him. So if he tells her, you are engaged to me with the money that I still have in you, so she's going to be engaged, and he doesn't have to give any other monies. So the pasuk is equating Girayin buying out to that of Yud. Now, ma Yud, just like Yud, avagav di iboy miyad. Even though if he wants to, he could do Yud, meaning to get engaged to his Amavriya. Viboy, if he wants to love miyad, he doesn't even have to do it. Yet still the halach is kol heichad miyad. If you cannot do Yud, the halach is labas v'nazvini. It's not a sale. The Gemara tells later on that her father's not allowed to sell her to relatives. Why? Because she would be forbidden to marry them because of erva. So I cannot fulfill what the pasuk says. Ashaloya ada. So you see that it's critical to have the ability to do Yud, even though you don't even have to if you don't want to. Here also, Giruya is compared to that of Yud to teach me. If you cannot do Girayin, then it's not going to be as a sale. So obviously you need to be able to do Girayin, and therefore you see that the Amma cannot be bought with the Pruta, because then she won't be able to do Girayin. So now the Gemara concludes the statement of Rish Lakish, of this third approach in the opinion of Beis Shammai, that said, why did Beis Shammai hold you have to have a dinner like Chizkiah? So it says the Gemara, the Kidushin ish Beis Shammai, according to Beis Shammai, the Kidushin of a woman, nafkalu Amavriya. Where do we learn it out from? We compare it to the Amavriya. Ma Amavriya, just like the Jewish maidservant bepruta lemekanya, as we just proved a moment ago. She cannot be acquired with a pruta because she has to be able to have giroin kesef. Af isha bepruta lemekacha. So to a woman cannot be engaged with a pruta because we learned enough from the Kidushin of Yud. Just like when you're getting engaged to Amavriya, that Yud, that Kidushin, cannot be less than the pruta because you see that you buy her with more money than that. So too for that of a regular woman. So the Gemara says, wait a second. The Ima maybe say palga the dinner. Maybe she was bought for half of a dinner, this Amma, which you could downgrade it to a pruta. Or vemeshtei prutas. Maybe say she was bought with 2 prutas. How do you know that she had to have been bought with a dinner that Bisham is saying the minimum amount for Kedushin is going to be a dinner? So the Gemara says, no, kivan that fixed him a pruta. Once the Torah is obviously telling you that it cannot be a pruta, so obviously the Torah is trying to tell you that it has to have a significance. So ukme a dinner, so therefore we then appoint it to be a dinner, which is something significant. And that's why it's a dinner. And the last 4th interpretation is one small one. Rava Amar says, Haini Tami de Beshami says the reason why Beshami hold the Kedushin has to be with a dinner is Shaloi Yu B'nai Yisrael Kehefker. The Jewish women should not be like something that's an ownerless item, that you could just take a kopek and like throw it to her and then she's acquired to you. So it's rabbinically the Beshama is saying their halacha that they're going to remove any kedushin that's less than the dinner sirat. Although biblically, yes, the truth is that she should be engaged even with just a pruta, but the Rabbanan don't want them to be cheap, and therefore they mandated that it has to be at least a dinner. Those are the 4 different interpretations of Bishamai, why they hold that the kinyan of kedushin of kesef has to be that of a minimum of a dinner. Thank you to any time for hosting us.